Welcome everyone. Myself Prashant Wakchaure. Along with Girija Swami, we will be discussing about the ensuring multi-cloud security. I would like to thank to Prasad Kandare, who also helped us to gather the data about the multi-cloud security. Next. Okay. Regarding about us, I'm having 12 years of experience in storage domain and currently working as a principal SQL engineer at Veritas. Girija Swami is also working as a principal SQL engineer at Veritas, and she is having 9+ years of experience in storage and cloud data protection domain. Next slide. Okay, so agenda will be we will be covering the cloud computing security, some use case weak security use case pattern, and the challenges of using the multi-cloud and the best practices to prevent the multi-cloud security. Next slide. Okay, so for the growth of the multi-cloud adoptions, as per ISC report, the 76% organizations are using the 2 or more cloud providers, and 20% organizations are using one cloud provider only. There are 4% of the organization those are not using any cloud provider, but they are targeting or started migrating to a cloud. Next. Okay. Now we will discuss about the traditional security and the cloud security. So traditional security means the on-premises data center security, and cloud security is cloud basically. In traditional data center, we are having the defined perimeters or the scope, and into which we are deploying the security solution like firewall or intrusion detection system. So the inside that perimeter, we are having the high trusted network and direct device communication and single tenancy and exclusive security responsibility. Outside of this perimeter, we are having the low trusted network. In cloud, we are having the undefined perimeter or scope of the cloud is, and we can say scope of the cloud is rapidly increasing. So we can say the zero or low trust network. Yeah. In case of cloud, we are always have a management plane interface, which is used to manage our cloud infrastructure and application. So instead of controlling the data center configuration with the boxes and wire, it is now controlled with the API or web console. So multi-tenancy present the complicated security implications. So when data is stored into a public cloud, it is stored on the shared infrastructure with other or untrusted tenants. So by hosting the data into a cloud, we are introducing a third party into a governance model that is a cloud provider. And there are some security responsibilities, and we will be covering in coming slide. Yeah, next. Okay, so this is the security responsibility chart. So it's we can see the security responsibilities are depend on the service model and the security layer. So for the all the service model and physical service security layer, we can see it's a completely responsibility of the cloud provider. For the application security, we can see it's for the SaaS service model. We can see that it's a shared responsibility between the enterprise or organization and between the cloud provider. For the application security, the infrastructure as a service and the platform as a service, it's a completely responsibility of the organization or enterprises. So likewise, we are having the different service model and the security layer with the appropriate responsibilities. Yeah, next slide. Okay, so now we will see some of the use cases or security use case pattern that we have did the research. Next slide. Okay. So use case one is basically for the security layer, which is having the management plane. So organization create a new cloud account and for the new team, and they did not specify any IAM role or policy with the restricted permission. So user access the cloud management plane with the user credential without a MFA. So it's a we can say it's a entry to your entire clouds ecosystem through the management plane. The second use case is for the data security, where the user creates a storage account and generate a SaaS URI. And for that SaaS URI, the user does not set the proper attributes like expiry and allowed protocol or allowed source ranges. And also data is not stored in an encrypted format. This is a kind of example of the data breach. The third one is a network security, security layer threats, we can say. The user creates a VM in cloud with a easy password and credential, and he tries to SSH to VM from the internal network. But the for the SSH, user is not able to SSH because the default deny is set on the security group, and he tries to modify the security group to allow the port 22. Uh, User is not sure about the source IP range, so it set it to 0.0.0.0, or we can say it's a widely open widely open. And this can lead to access to any third party or hacker to your VMs. So we can say it's a DDoS activity. Fourth one is again a data security, where the user created DB in a cloud and migrated the data into it. But the DB configuration is cloud are not set properly due to assumptions of similarity between the on-premises DB environment. Now the DB is publicly accessible, so this is again a data breach threat. Okay, the fifth one is basically API level security concerns. So user or organization creates a cloud account for dev test team. Roles policy are created with the permission set as a X without careful consideration of usage. Access credentials are not rotated periodically, and user creates a public container registry and pushes the images having the same code with the access credential hard coded for the testing purpose. So this is again insecure API or CLI access example. Yeah. Now we will be covering the multi-cloud security challenges and how to overcome or best practices to overcome this security, multi-cloud security. So I will hand over to Girija Swami for the next step.
Okay, thank you, Prashant, for explaining the use cases. These use cases may arise in your environment if the security is weak, and we are not considering, we have not taken the actions to consider the security aspect while using the cloud services. So let's look at some of the challenges. Although these are these may not be complete set of challenges, but these are some of the challenges we picked up for the sake of this presentation. So we will look at the challenges per layer. So there are we have divided it into the different domains, so that you could get an idea that at what domain which challenges could be seen. So first domain is the compliance, governance, and audit strategy. Okay. So when choosing to work with the multi-cloud, you first, organizations first think about their business needs. They also think about the cloud features provided by the cloud providers. Beyond the features and the business needs, we also need to look out the governance and compliance needs, because every cloud provider has different strategies in their contracts, right? Every business need is different, and we also have this, we are stuck with a problem that how do you manage all that? because we need to now fit the business needs with the compliance needs and the governance needs and the contractual requirements. These requirements also vary based on the geographical regions, regulations, laws, and data privacy laws, right? So this is again a challenge in this area. Next area is the management plane security. So when we get an account, we first log into the account using the user credentials. So user credentials is a kind of a one-way entry into the cloud ecosystem. This is like single door to your data center, wherein if unless you restrict the permission to that data center, all the resources are kind of open for threads. So having insecure interfaces, APIs. So interfaces like APIs and CLIs are another way to access the cloud ecosystem. So having insecure interfaces or having unauthorized access, lacking roles and permissions policies are kind of some of the challenges in this area. Third area or third domain is the infrastructure security, wherein let's consider infrastructure as compute, network, and the storage, right? So infrastructure is kind of a fundamental component where upon which everything is built upon. So let's say, for example, if we consider infrastructure security in the sense of compute, right? So we have divided the infrastructure into these three components because the needs or the challenges or the best practices to be applied in these three areas are different, right? And they cannot be catered under a single umbrella. So let's consider compute security as part of the infrastructure security. So when we are creating, there are two layers, right? So this is, as we talked about in the previous slide, this is a kind of a cloud shared responsibility kind of model, wherein cloud provider is responsible for managing the physical layer, which is the physical hardware, the physical infrastructure of the cloud. And we are cloud users are responsible for managing the virtual layer or the virtual resources we create upon that cloud ecosystem, right? So how do we manage that cloud compute, right? This is the challenge we have. Like we have multiple instances running in there, right? They are unpatched. We have they are not patched with the OS upgrade. They are not patched with the security fixes, right? How do you manage that? Next, let's consider the another area of infrastructure, which is the network security. So one of the challenges having the unstructured networks or overlapping networks, wherein we haven't considered the network isolation and network segregation while using the workloads, right? Some challenges like you having the insecure access control rules or having unrequired open ports to some unknown ranges, like we saw in some of the use cases, right? These may lead to some of the attacks like DDoS, botnet, or malware kind of attacks, right? Next is the data security. So this data security is at most importance because it is a wide area. We may not be able to cover everything, but the first or the main or the common challenge we face here is the storing the data in encrypted format or in the plain text, right? So how do we make sure that the data is stored in the encrypted format or not? And if we store it in the encrypted format, how do you manage the key lifecycle management of that encryption key, right? So these are some of the problems. Recently, we have seen, right, the ransomware, malware attacks, they are increasing the cloud context. So how do you make sure that we have that, the strategies or the prevention techniques applied here, right, for securing our data? Because everything comes down to the data, right? We are either using the data, or we are transferring the data, or we are modifying the data, right? So having the data security or the data security threats are the common challenges. Next comes the application security. Now let's consider application in two layers, like applications we are developing, the cloud-based applications we are developing, and the cloud-based applications we are using or consuming for our business needs. So here some of the examples are like having the unsafe code written in the applications, or storing the API credentials, not rotating, not considering the security aspect while this development or the testing phase of the applications, or not having the business continuity kind of plan, right? So these are some of the examples of application security. Or not even for the applications which we are consuming, not choosing the security features of those applications, right? Not understanding those features and not consuming those features is again a challenge. in the context of application security. Last and most concerning area, and this this area is basically voted by the most of the organization as most concerning area in the cloud security report of 2021 of ISC. That this is the concerning area, and this is because lack of skills and lack of cloud service awareness, and users are not aware of the how the service is consumed, what are the security features of that cloud, and due to that it leads to misconfigurations, and it may lead to a security threat. So these were all about the challenges, or set of some of the challenges which might be observed at every layer. Let's look at the preventive actions which we can take. These are best practices based on these layers. There can be other best practices which can suit to your organization needs as well. So let's look at the best practices layer by layer again. So we talked about the different compliance, governance, and audit needs for cloud provider, right? So how do you make sure that, how do you simplify this, and how do you have a process for this? So we can identify our organization's needs, compliance and governance needs, and we can develop a process to suit our policies, right, and our business needs, so that can be followed for multiple cloud providers. Next, for ensuring the management plane security, what we can do is, the first thing is this: having the strong authentication, having roles, policies defined, having user access defined, right? Like for example, we have super admins or non-admin users, or users with some defined access, right? Let's say for example, some user is using some services, so he is only granted the permission to access those services, like that. MFA is important, like multi-factor authentication. It is kind of a one-step barrier in case of any security breach. Apart from that, like management plane, we also have the APIs and CLIs, right? Hardening of those APIs and CLIs is also important. We need to make sure that they're not penetrable and all, right? Apart from that, we can also explore this ABAC, which is gaining popularity in the cloud-based areas. So next, as we talked, right, infrastructure is divided. We divided up infrastructure into compute, network, and security, right? So let's say, for example, considering compute security and then infrastructure security, what can we do, to make sure that the infrastructure or the compute is secure? So we need to first understand the shared responsibility model here, because we need to understand what are the responsibilities, what are the security responsibilities of the cloud provider, and what lies or what we are stuck with, or what we need to make sure that, how the compute is secure. So we need to understand that shared responsibility model, and make sure that the security is implemented accordingly. For that, one example could be, we can disable the remote access, or we can integrate the security testing into image creation. For example, one aspect we talked about in the challenges is that we have multiple running instances, and they are not patched as the OS upgrades come or the security fixes come, right? So what we can do is, we can automate this process of patching the images, right? So that next time the image is created, it will be secure in the patched image. So these kind of techniques we can apply in the infrastructure security. In the network security, again, it is under the shared responsibility model. So whatever virtual layer we have to make sure that it is secure. Here we can prefer the SDN as the software defined network. So wherein it isolates the data plane networking with the control plane networking, which provides that network isolation and flexibility. And having that network isolation or segregation for critical workloads is also important, because one network breach should not lead to the other breach of the other application in another network, right? So that will help us in those scenarios. Apart from that, the general rules, like adding the firewall rules or having the ACLs or VPNs, will also help in the cloud as well. Next is the application security. Here, as we talked, right, the applications we are developing and applications we are consuming. So for the applications we are developing, we can make sure that the security is considered in that software development life cycle model at the development phase as well as the testing phase. We have considered the security testing, penetration testing, or vulnerability assessment or threat modeling, those kind of aspects in our development phases. Apart from this, considering the security in the SDLC, we also need to make sure that we have the architecture for failure. What do I mean by architecture for failure is, we need to have some strategy or a plan or some kind of a response kind of strategy which can be applied to have the business continuity in case of some incident happens with the application. Apart from that, we can also leverage the immutable workloads whenever possible. One example of having this immutable workloads is having auto scaling kind of feature, wherein as we talked in the infrastructure, right, that infrastructure, having the image creation automated, right? So in case of auto scaling, what happens that instances are shut down when we are not using those instances, right? And we after that, we will just patch the images. We will have the images updated. That automation will run. Next time when the instances will be run as part of the auto scaling, when there is some operations coming into that application, those instances will run with those security patches. So these kind of features we can use and consume to ensure the application security. So next area is the data security. We can make sure that we are encrypting the data. We are for sure encrypting the data in transit, at rest, or in use. We can use the customer managed keys and the platform managed keys that cloud provider also provides. We need to make sure that we have key rotation and expiry set, that lifecycle management is set. Apart from encrypting the data, we also need to have the backup strategies or data loss protection or object locking kind of methods to protect us from ransomware kind of threats. Veritas Net Backup also has products has this protection against the ransomware, wherein we provide the features to which has the one kind of features, wherein write once and read many kind of feature, or different kind of backup strategies with the immutable storage. So these features are provided. Apart from this, we also need to have the data sharing and access controls, wherein there are access and the sharing defined, wherein who can access what kind of data through which network, right? So having these kind of sharing and access controls are also important. Last area is the user error and misconfiguration. So here the main responsibility lies with the users as collectively, right? Whoever is using that cloud service should be aware of the use cases of that cloud service, should be aware of the security features of that cloud service, and should have that proper training for using those services. So what we can do in case of multi-cloud, right? We can set up a security procedures or best practices based on your organization needs. Let's say, for example, we are using set X of services, right? 2-3 services. How do we make sure that we have the best practices written for all those services, so that any new user will come, they will just refer those security procedures, and they will have that security awareness created in them. Apart from having this understanding the cloud services and security procedures, we also need to have the incident response strategy defined, because if incident is occurred, we need to make sure that we are prepared for it, right? We have the detection analysis kind of techniques defined, tools defined. We also need to contain it or eradicate it or recover from it, right? And we also need to do the postmortem, because we need to make sure that those incidents does not occur again in the future, right? And we can enhance our security procedures or the security best practices based on that. So this was all about the security challenges and best practices. Apart from that, cloud providers also provide some tools, which security tools and services which can be consumed. And they also provide some advisors, like which service, let's say for example you're using some service, so how it is behaving, how can be done to make sure that the service is used securely or service is used efficiently, right? So you can consume that as well. Externally, there are some technologies or the tools based on technologies like CASB and the CSPM, right? The Cloud Security Access Broker and the Cloud Security Posture Management, right? You can explore those areas as well if you think that the organizations require them for maintaining the cloud security. So in conclusion, I mean, the security is everybody's responsibility. The cloud security, when you are consuming multiple clouds, there can be differences in the usage of the security. So we need to understand the security aspects, security implications of every service, and the service usage as well. And it should not mean that when moving to the cloud, it should not mean that the secure we are compromising on the security, but it should mean that we are enhancing the security with the help of cloud provider security standards as well as our own security stack, right? So yeah, that's all we had about this presentation. Maybe we can take the questions now. Thank you very much, everyone. These are some of the references and the data sources from which we did the research from, and we gathered the data. Yeah, so this was all about it. So thank you very much, everyone. We are open for questions.
Thank you, everyone.